Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. That time of the month has come where I have to do a wrap-up and tell you all about the books that I have read this month. I read a total of 4 books this month. I'm still busy reading the 5th book, but I will probably finish this book before the end of the month, but I have not finished it in time to include it in this wrap-up. So, starting from the beginning of the month, the first book I read was Hum, and I actually listened to this as an audiobook. Hum by Natalia Hero. This book is only about 100 pages long. It's only an hour-long audiobook, and it follows sort of the story of a woman dealing with her trauma after having been sexually assaulted, and giving birth to a hummingbird that follows her around for the rest of her life, essentially. And it was a very weird book, but I thought it was a very interesting way to explore how trauma stays with you and how it presents itself in people's lives after you've gone through a traumatic experience. That said, it was still a very strange book, but it was an interesting read. It was an interesting perspective to read and definitely gave me some things to think about. The next book I listened to also as an audiobook, which was Thank You for Listening by Juliet Whelan. And I said this in my reading vlog as well. It was a great book, but I found it a little bit predictable, but that I think is just down to the fact that it's a romance book, and in romance books you generally want there to be a happy ending, and generally you know when the main character is introduced to their love interest in the beginning of the book, you know how it's going to end up. There were a few plot twists that happened in this book that are not conventional to the romance genre, I think, but also I figured out what was going to happen as soon as I was introduced to these potential plot twists. So maybe that's just because I read a lot of mystery books and I'm used to trying to figure out what's going to happen, but it was still a very enjoyable book overall. After that, I moved over to the physical side of books. I read physical books for the rest of the month. The next book I read was Ready by David Richo. It is about how to know when you should leave a situation or a job or a person and when you should stay. Very briefly, succinctly put. And it was an interesting book. There were some insights in it, but I also mentioned this in my reading vlog. He focuses a lot on relationships, which is not necessarily what I was looking for in this book, but there were still some interesting things in it overall. The next and last book I have completed so far this month is A House Full of Daughters by Juliet Nicolson. This is essentially Juliet's recounting of 5 generations of women in her family. So starting with her, now let me get this right, great-great-grandmother all the way down to her. And then she also speaks briefly about her own 2 daughters and her granddaughter. I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I had such a great time reading this book. This book sort of, in the beginning of the book, the book fascinates you because you learn all of these things that you never knew about these women that you also didn't really know existed. And then in the middle of the book, your heart breaks because of all of the sadness. And then at the end of the book, it puts your heart back together again with a lovely little red bow around it. And it is so heartwarming at the end. It was quite a journey going through all 5 of these women's lives and how they dealt with their own mothers, their mothers-in-law, their husbands, their relationships, their children. And overall, it was just a fantastic book. I would recommend this to anybody, particularly if you have any interest in the Nicolson family and the Sackville West family. Then it would be great for you to read this. But even if you have no prior knowledge of them and are not interested in them per se, it's still a really interesting and great memoir to read. The book that I'm currently reading is if I could hold it in my hands, Pollyanna by Eleanor H. Porter. I've only just started reading this book, so I'm very not far into the book. Pardon the sounds of construction coming from next door. We will just have to deal with that because I'm not going to start this again. But it's a very short book, although the type is very small in these Collins Classics editions. I think I should be able to get through this one very quickly because I'm already enjoying the story, even though I'm only a few pages in. So I will finish this by the end of the week, and then I can move on to my December reading, which I'm very excited for. But you will have to wait until next week to find out what that will be. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you are, and I will see you again next week with another video. Bye.